over. So I'm putting my bat pins in right now. Oh, you can't refresh. Hold on, let me open the chat. Oh, okay. So that's good to know that it's an Instagram thing and not a me thing. That makes me feel better. All right. Well, you get a show, private show, and then maybe it'll pop on in a little bit and I can redo this. So I'm just putting my bat pins in. It makes terrible noise. So I went to UMass Lowell yesterday and I did a workshop with the kids over there using the Flexi bats. I did a wheel throwing demo and then I did some hand building work. That was, it was really fun. The kids were really receptive. It's very different going into a college and teaching and then going back to your job the next day and teaching fifth graders who are eating the strings on their sweatshirt while they're asking you questions. So this bat that I'm using is our Paisley bat. It's not up on our website yet. I'm thinking it'll be a fun, maybe April or May design. It's one of my favorites. Super intricate and small, but the negative space is just as powerful as the positive space. So I think it's helping out a bit. So I wedged my clay. In addition to wedging my clay, I want to make sure I start with a nice flat bottom. And I'm going to take my clay and I'm going to slam it directly on the wheel. And I like to make sure I compress it down really well to get it stuck there. I also want to make sure I start with a fairly cylindrical shape, so I don't have to force the clay in any sort of crazy direction. When I start, I'm going to start with a downward motion to get my, yeah, what a bummer, it's really not working. I start with a downward motion. I don't start forward because I don't want to, one, push the bat off the wheel, but two, I don't want the clay to move. So the typical pushing your clay this way does not work because you do not want the clay to move forward. You just want it to get balanced in the middle. Think about it like the stamps you use when you're hand building, right? Like if you roll out a slab and you put your texture on it and it slides forward, it's gonna come right off. So I'm just coning my piece. When I cone, I like to take my pointer fingers and I use this part and I'm essentially pushing forward as I come out. So I'm using my fingers and I'm using my wrists and I'm slowly and consistently coming up. Now, a lot of potters, when they're first learning how to throw, I think speed is a big thing. So it's kind of like learning another language or trying to talk to someone of another language. You need to wait a minute and be patient, and eventually the two of you find ways to kind of be receptive of each other and understand what's going on. And so the clay to me is the same way. You need to give it a minute and all of a sudden it's going to understand what you're trying to tell it to do. So I'm just going to cone this guy again. It's recycled clay, so coning, you can't cone too much. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my cone down. I'm going to use my thumbs and I'm just going to push forward. So I'm put my thumb on my pointer finger so I don't get this weird overlap. And I'm going to make sure I push down and I'm going to push in until I get this like hump shape right here. And it's the same as throwing on any other bat besides when you first start. And besides your first pull. So if you notice, all of this is normal throwing stuff. I'm going to now push in a little bit and push down just to fine tune my work. So when I do this part, I notice a lot of people make like this undercut under their piece, and you actually want the clay to come out just a little bit. You almost want it perpendicular to the wheel, but you definitely don't want an undercut. So what I do is I tell people to push right here, push with the mush, push in. Can you let me know if Instagram is working for you while I'm working? And so what I'm doing right now is I'm just fine tuning my centering the same way you normally would. Remember, you're not trying to move the clay too much. You're trying to mold the clay. It's a little different than how you can handle it on a regular bat. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drill my hole. Yes, it's working, or yes, you'll let me know. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drill my hole down into my piece. And I like to actually leave my thumb on the side while I drill. So what I do is I'm going to drill down with these fingers. I put my thumb in here so that way I can actually compress my top at the same time. So even if my piece was a little off centered, by using my thumb to compress while I drill my hole, it adds like another level of compression so that piece doesn't start to get wobbly just yet. So now I'm going to widen my hole, and I'm going to use this edge right here. And if you notice, my thumb kind of stays in the same spot because I'm widening. My piece shouldn't be growing or anything like that just yet. I have a crazy air bubble in here. I can feel it. So I use my thumb to kind of help with any wobbles that I might get. So I have my sponge, and I'm going to use it to compress my bottoms. I know some people that use rib tools or use throwing sticks. I'm way too aggressive of a potter for that, and I just go right through the bottom. So I like just a nice compress with a sponge, and I think it works well. So after I widen my piece, what I like to do is I'm going to collar my work, and this is where some of my height comes from. So I like to widen. I don't go past the edge, but I do widen my base quite a bit. And now I'm collaring. And if you notice, I have some height, and I haven't even had to pull up my wall yet. So I'm going to do my first few pulls. Now, this is the second time that you have to kind of swap up your work a little bit when you're working with the Flexi bat. Your first pull cannot be super aggressive. And I know I'm so used to it too on a regular bat where like you literally just go in and you make that powerhouse move and it comes right up. You just kind of can't make that large of an impact on these or your bat will come off. Because your piece is just suctioned so well, I guess, to it, but the bat is not suctioned to the wheel. So I'm just gonna do like a more reserved first pull. And then after that, I can go in and I can start throwing my piece like I normally would. So that was my first pull. And like I said, it just wasn't a powerhouse move. And I'm gonna go in and I'll add pull 2 and 3. You guys can see I have this crazy air bubble here. I think our clay probably could have hung out in the Peter Pugger a little bit longer. Okay, I'm gonna do one more. So I don't have any peel reveals, but I'm actually gonna take these off right at the end so we'll be able to see what they look like. Since I'm not keeping them as cups, I don't really care too much. I am gonna cut up this funky thing though, because I didn't wedge very well. So I will show you guys how to use the wood tool. So after you've been throwing for a while on these bats, you do, it kind of becomes a muscle memory to know how deep into your piece you need to go. But I know a lot of people when they're first learning do this thing where they go, I didn't want to cut off that into my piece. So they cut off less and they still trim. And that's totally okay. I kind of have a muscle memory built up. So I know that it's about 3.5 inches wide. Some people have used calipers. I laser engraved onto, I don't know if you guys can see it, but I laser engraved onto my wood tools. So I can go, oh, that's 3 inches. And then I know as long as I have a direct cylinder going down, I'm fairly close to there. And that's how I measure my stuff. I don't like to have a lot of things over here. I don't like to have a lot of things to clean up. I don't like to have a lot of things that I have to remember because I will forget them. typically when I'm throwing by myself, I have to get up 4 times because I forget something, and it's usually like the sponge. And then I'll be sitting here throwing, right? And I will, I'll just all of a sudden look over at the wheel in front of me or the wheel next to me, and there'll be like 2 sponges like squished between like the wall and the wheel. I'm like, well, I could have grabbed that one. Anyways, so I am taking my, my tool, and what I'm going to do is I like to start a little bit higher and I'm going to glide it down. I definitely use a point. The way I explain it, I'll go to the side so that way you can see it a little bit more in the video at this angle. The way that I explain it is you almost want to merge with traffic, right? You don't want to go directly in, but you don't want to go with it too much because then you won't cut anything. So I go a little bit higher, and I'm focusing on just making that basic cylinder shape just because that's what helps me know what my 3 or 3.5 inches are. I'm just, wrong direction. It's a good thing that wasn't a kid's work and it wasn't sloppily wet. So what I do is after I cut my basic stuff off with the wood tool, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna trim just a little bit more. So I go in and I just keep cutting. And you feel this like, it's almost like a vibration. You can feel the edge of when the foot starts, and that's how you know to stop trimming. It almost makes like a little sound, you can kind of feel it. So after you make your cup or your cylinder or whatever, I could take this off if this is what I wanted to do. This is when I like to add bellies and shapes and stuff to my work. And that's because typically you get to make your shapes and then you trim and you get to further on decide what they look like. In this way of working, you have to trim to where you know that you have to end your trimming. So I have made the mistake of making my belly or something a little too wide, and then I go in and trim and it has too much of an angle. So that's why I like to actually work backwards. So I'm just getting it a little wet on the outside just so it's sticky, because this clay has an air bubble in it. So I'm trying to make it glide through my fingers as much as possible so I don't make a crazy bump for you guys. But when I make a belly, I like to put one hand up higher than the outside that's pushing. And that outside hand is going to tell that belly where to stop. So if you notice, I'm not necessarily pushing in, but because I have pressure, my belly doesn't go anywhere. And then if I want to, I can bring this up just a little bit. And I can kind of add some shape and stuff into my work. So another thing I like to do with my wood tool is I know a lot of people will use a rib tool for this to clean up their pots, but like I said, I like to have as minimal tools available to me because I'm lazy and I don't want to clean. So to clean up my slip, I actually I sharpen my wood tools. I'll sand them down even more so they have a nice sharp edge. Treat them like a pencil. But so I'm just going over my whole piece with my wood tool. I'm really just scraping off slip, and I'm going very carefully the exact same way I would with my rib tool. And it's just one less thing. And obviously this doesn't work for people that are like varnishing or doing anything like that. But for me, and I just need like a basic little bit of stuff coming off, it's just one less tool or thing for me to remember. I actually probably just started it because I forgot a wood tool one day. I mean, a rib tool one day, and I was probably too lazy to go get it. So this is one of my pieces. I will put this to the side for just a little bit, and I'm going to throw one more, and then we'll peel these off. They'll be super sticky, and they won't look the best when they come off, but they'll give you an idea of what the bottom looks like, which is the most important part, because right now I don't really care if the pot lasts. So this is our Monstera bat. It is white and there's clay in here, but there's just a little bit of clay and it actually is really nice. I didn't wash it off for a reason. As you start using these bats, you don't really have to use as much cornstarch. You can, every time you peel the bat off, there's a little bit of clay stuck in, not enough where it fills in the texture, but enough where it almost creates this like clay patina, and it acts as like almost like a release agent. It helps dry out the new clay a little bit that's going onto the bat. And then it just, I don't know, it helps like it come up the same way that a cornstarch would. So again, I wedged my clay. I have a nice flat bottom. The flat bottom is what's gonna go on here so I don't get any texture. If you notice too, I flattened it out a lot so I have no swirls. I don't want swirl lines or wrinkle lines in the bottom of my piece. So I'm gonna bang that on. Remember, I'm gonna push it so I really get it into the shape that I want. So I can push forward as little as possible. If you push your clay forward, you're sliding it off of the texture. It's the same thing as when you're working in the hand building room and you don't peel your texture up off of your form. It's the equivalent of sliding it off. You're not going to get something that you're happy with. So you need to make sure that once your piece is there, it's not going anywhere. So I'm going to get my hands wet, elbows on my thighs. Right hand is under my left hand because my clay is going counterclockwise. And I'm pushing down. Now, if you notice my thighs are wiggling, so I'm going to squeeze them so I can control my clay. I am squeezing my right fingers in just a little bit. And I'm starting to come up in this cone shape. So to come up in the cone shape, like I said, I like to use my right fingertips to get out any funky bumps and wiggles. And I'm using the heel of my left hand to help put myself in the middle. And I'm coming up slow and consistent. Remember, I'm trying to really be receptive of the clay and understand what it's telling me. So if it needs more time, I'm going to give it more time. But I'm also not going to stay in one spot. So it's kind of a little bit in between. You got to find that sweet spot. So I'll cone again to show you guys. It's my left heel. Actually, you know what I'll do is I'll widen my fingers so you guys can really see just the spots that touch. So it's this heel and it's these fingertips that are doing the work. Now this is a little awkward for me, but I just want to be able to show you that that's where your energy is coming from. So because I did that so weird, I just gotta plop this guy right back down. Okay, and we're ready to go. Oh, now we're going too fast. Okay. So I'm gonna bring my cone down. And what I like to do is I take my thumb and I'm actually gonna push forward. I put my thumb on my pointer finger and I'm pushing my hands forward so the cone ends up pushing down into the center. And that way I don't have to use too much force pushing forward later on. Okay, so now that my piece is in this basic shape, I need to really bring it down. I need to kind of lock it in place down at the bottom. So this is when I'm gonna go and I'm gonna push down and I'm gonna push forward. And I am gonna push with the mush. That's what I tell my littles. So if I push like this, you get that undercut and we don't want that. We want it to blend just a little bit. So you want a little bit more pressure from like the meat of your hand. And you almost want to tell this part of your hand to push outwards a little bit. This has nothing to do with the bat. This is just me and my opinions of centering. And then again, I'm just staying here just for a second, just until the clay has a chance to kind of tell me that it's ready for me to move. And then you want to release it slowly. So what does slowly mean? I will tell people that they need to release their clay slowly. And they literally will take like 20 seconds coming off. I would say go slowly over 3 seconds, meaning you're not going like this, but you're going 1, 2, 3, and then you should be off of your piece. I've been adding a lot of water to my work. It's literally just because I am talking, so I'm not paying attention as much as I should be. So for drilling my hole, I drill very differently, I think, than some people, but I do it so I can compress my rim as I drill. I've changed my way of drilling when I started teaching beginners, and I noticed that they tell me that their piece gets off center when they drill their hole. So by being able to compress your rim while you drill, I've noticed that it has helped them out a lot. So like, why not just continue doing it? So I drill with my middle finger and my ring finger, and I put my thumb between my middle and my pointer finger like this. And then this hand goes right here. Now I know that my thumb can go right over here as I need to for it to compress, and I can keep going. So if you notice where my thumb is compressing the rim of my clay. It's not going anywhere as I drill my hole. So if any wobbles or wiggles come up, because I'm pushing with my thumb, not down, but I'm not letting the clay come up. I'm letting it stay strong. I can push it back down and hopefully it'll balance itself out. Now I'm going to do the same thing when I widen. Now, if you notice, I'm not widening too fast. I'm definitely consistent. I'm cruising along, but I'm not speeding my way there. And if you notice, look at my thumb, it's still there too. Very helpful. Just trying to make sure the clay stays where it should. So this is my piece. I widened my base a little bit more than I should. And the reason I like to do this is because on my feet, I really want to make sure I'm able to compress all the way down and in on my work. So I'm giving this a good compression. I'm also getting rid of a lot of water that I might have used to drill my hole. Okay. And so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to collar my piece back in. And I'm going to use my pinkies right now, and I'm giving a bit of a tug and a squeeze, and I'm coming up. And if you notice, my piece is already nice and tall, and I haven't even done my first pull yet. So the next thing you're going to do, your thumbs together, you're going to pinch your fingers, and you slowly come up. Remember, this is the first one this is your first pull. So on your first pull on the flexi bats, you can't be too aggressive. It's the second thing that you kind of just have to be careful of when you're working here. It's a little bit of a learning curve. And then after that, you can proceed like you normally would. So I typically will pull my pieces up in 2 pulls if I'm making a mug. And so when I'm working on the flexi bat, it might take me 3 or 4 pulls, which is like literally like an additional 60 seconds. So it's fine. But it's definitely a little hard of a concept to grasp, I guess, when you're first learning. So that was my first pull. Everything went smoothly. It still grew about 3 or 4 inches. Into you might not do your first pull super aggressive, so you might not even notice a difference working with the bat. This is my second pull. Same thing. I'm just throwing like I normally would at this point. And I can probably get one more pull out of this babe. If you notice, I left some clay down here. I didn't try to really get it all. Sometimes when I'm throwing without a bat, I'll get kind of competitive with myself. And I'm like, oh, let me try to get all that clay from the outside. Like that's where my height is. Well, on a flexi bat, you want to make sure that you leave enough clay to be able to trim off and stuff like that. So, I mean, if you need a little bit more clay to get your height where you want it, so you're not digging in at the edge, which would be like possibly where your foot is, I think that that's okay. And so what I'm doing is I'm just doing my third pull. And I'm actually only going to bring that up halfway because I just needed to kind of even out my clay. So I'm going to take my sponge. I'm going to clean out the inside of my piece. That wind is crazy. And now I'm going to use my wood tool and I'm going to ride it down. I know it's 3.5 inches, but I'll measure it anyways. So yeah, I'm good. And I'm going to cruise my piece down. And this is just how I trim. Obviously, everybody can trim their work separately, their own way. But I like to go, I cut an aggressive amount off. And I know that if I stay in a cylinder shape, I know that I will have a very close bottom to where I am needed. So now I'm just going in and I'm shaving some clay off. You might, if you notice, my clay came off in like spirals, very similar to they would if you were trimming with a rib tool. With a loop tool. That's because my clay is, I don't want to say it's on the drier side, it's definitely softer. But my clay is not super, super slobbery wet. So if you need to, you can always leave your piece out for a little bit and then come back to do this step too, depending on how much time you have in the studio. These are meant to save time on trimming, but it kind of just depends your process. So again, I like to clean my tool up with my wood tool. I don't bother with a rib tool or anything unless I'm making a shape. I sometimes will even clean up my bat the same way because it really makes them look nice and clean. And then so that is my basic shape. And now what I'm gonna do is I can go in and I will add a little, let's see, what should we add? I don't know. We did a belly on the last one. Let's see if we can, we'll make this into like maybe a little bud vase or something. So when I make a bud vase, because I'm gonna add a neck, I wanna know that the clay is gonna go this way. If it's gonna go anywhere, I don't want it to go out because then it's gonna ripple. So I try to automatically start my clay in the inward direction. Now, fortunately, I have itty bitty hands. So even though I'm going in the out direction, I'm gonna actually just push this out just a little bit. And then notice this outside hand is right here. So if anything, my clay just went vertical just a little bit. So when I take it out, it's still not flaring. And then so again, I can go in and I'm just making sure the clay is going in that direction before I do anything. So now I can go down a little bit lower. And again, you want to make sure that the clay is going in. You can always take it and make it go more flat, more vertical later on. But once it chooses to go over, sometimes you just can't get it back. So I'm always controlling my rim as I work. And I find that that helps a lot. As you compress, you're gonna notice that your piece gets thicker at the top. So what I like to do is I will now do another pull and I will use that to thin out my clay, and it's also gonna help elongate the neck of my vase while I work. I can probably do one more. I have an air bubble in here. I told you guys I was working with recycled clay. It's definitely not a fan. So that's how I create my bottled neck bases. And if I want it to go in even more, I have the control right now because of the direction and everything things are going in. It's also okay. I don't think potters really realize this because we're so used to pulling up. You can push down. Now I'm a little bit wobbly, so I'm just gonna take my finger and I push myself right back on. I slowly let go. Wham bam, thank you ma'am. Cute little bottleneck vase made on the Flexi-Bat. I'm gonna take my needle tool and just trim off some, no I'm not. I'm gonna take my needle tool and trim off some of that gunk that I made. And I'm gonna go in and just rework the lip just a little bit. And I actually think I might be able to get it just a little bit thinner, just enough for like a one stem piece. I think would be nice. And again, I usually just take my my wood tool, and that's what I use to clean up my pieces because I'll go over them later with a sponge when they're bone dry. But this will take off some nice slip and some nice moisture. Awesome. So I'm gonna take this off. Actually, I have nothing to wipe my hands with because we've talked about me prepping. I should probably get myself a checklist. I can just like go through it. Like I haven't done this enough in life. But I'll do some peel reveals with you. So this is, this piece obviously we literally just made about 10 minutes ago. And it's super sticky. And I always tell you guys to wait till your pieces are leather hard. And I think a lot of it is because people tend to throw really wet. So I'm gonna peel this off and it actually looks like it should be pretty good. But like I said, I throw on the drier side, meaning that yes, my clay on the outside is wet, but the clay on the inside does not get too wet. So the stuff all saturated down the bottom didn't get super sticky and gross. So I am actually able to peel this off right now and I can show you guys. And this is our paisley print. This one's not available yet, but it will be coming up. It's one of my favorite ones. So definitely throwing on the drier side. And that doesn't mean throwing your walls. I think everybody forgets that there's a bajillion steps of throwing before your walls. And every step is just as critical. So as long as you can try to afford to keep your piece a little bit drier, even in the other steps besides just with your walls, like your walls aren't going to do anything. The water's just going to go off on the side. It's different than the other steps where the water pools in the middle. But you're able to get a much more even clay to water distribution. So I am going to peel this one off, and this one was made 30 seconds ago. So we'll actually, we'll see if I'm full of phony baloney as well. Obviously my piece is gonna mush because it's soft, but the bottom should come off from the bat pretty well. So if you notice, I'm doing small little peels. Yes, this one's sticking just a little bit more, but it is coming off nicely. I'm slowly peeling it around just because obviously it's a little bit more fragile. I'm gonna give it a little tuck just because, like I said, it's wet. And this is our Monstera design. So you can see where some water did get underneath it, but like I said, I made this like 30 seconds ago. That water would have dried up and you wouldn't have seen that peel from there. But it still looks pretty good. So it's pretty nice. So one of my favorite things to do with pots when I'm not keeping them, I like to take them, I put them on the wheel, and I smush them because you can always just make it again. But yeah, I think learning how to get rid of your work is almost just as powerful as making your work. But so that's about all I have for you guys today. So if you guys have any questions, you can email us at flexibats@potterymill.com. We're also on Instagram. I would say we respond faster on Instagram. Don't call me. I don't listen to my voicemails. So that's about that. Okay. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everybody.